Okay, welcome back. We are in Matthew chapter 13, looking at the parable of the wheat and the tares. Last time, we actually read the parable as Jesus spoke it to the multitudes along the shore of the Sea of Galilee. He continues on speaking to them. They don't really know what he's talking about, although it would be great if they did know what he's talking about, because this parable directly applies to them. This is a parable about salvation. Now, we're going to skip over the two little parables that Jesus shared after this parable of the tares and the wheat. We'll come back to them, but let's jump down to verse number 36 this time in Matthew 13 to read Jesus' explanation of the parable. Before we do, however, let me say, anytime we have a parable, remember we have an imperfect illustration. There's no such thing as a perfect illustration. You have to be careful that you don't try to find details that really have no parallel to the reality that you're trying to convey in that parable. It's a parable is basically a large metaphor. The kingdom of heaven is like, and you can always find the similarities, but eventually it breaks down into things that are dissimilarities. Actually, a metaphor has been defined, I believe, as a comparison of two things that are essentially dissimilar, but which share some similarities. So it's our job, and it's the job of every interpreter, to try to find what is similar, but not go too far and begin to assign things that really should be assigned the designation of being dissimilar. All right, stay with me now. Matthew 13 and verse number 36. Then Jesus left the crowds. He went into the house. His disciples came to him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the tares in the field." And Jesus said, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man." Well, it's interesting he didn't say it was me, but we all know it was him, the Son of Man. He's sowing the good seed. So once again, the seed is going to be the Word of God and the fruit of the Word of God, the plants that grow up. And Jesus said in verse 38, "And the field is the world, and as for the good seed, these are the sons of the kingdom, and the tares are the sons of the evil one." Okay, so in strictest interpretation, unlike the former parable, the seed here does not represent the word of God going forth, although you could maybe derive that meaning in one small way. But Jesus is really talking about the meaning of the plants that grow up. He sows his good seed, which certainly could be considered the word of God, the gospel. As a result, from the good seed, good plants grow up. People are born again, believers in him. They are the sons of the kingdom, truly the sons of God. The other seed, the tares, produces something entirely different, not sons of the kingdom, not sons of God. And in fact, Jesus calls them the sons of the evil one because they originate from Satan. It's interesting. We have to be careful we don't go too far, but the word of God produces sons of God. The word of the devil produces sons of the devil. It all depends on what you ultimately believe. That determines what you become. Sons of the devil, those who are not saved, have believed something. They've believed lies from the devil. That's the only way they could possibly reject the truth of the gospel. Okay, so now he's explaining in the whole entire world, because the field is the world, you've got two kinds of people. You've got sons of the kingdom and you've got sons of the devil. It's based upon what they believe. And he goes on and says in verse 39, "The enemy who sowed them is the devil," speaking of the sons of the devil. "And the harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels." And so right now, there is no clear separation between the wheat and the tares, is there? We're all living together. It's like we're all in the same field. We're right up against each other, just like in this field. You can tell them apart, however, and I pointed that out to you previously. The workers of the landowner noticed what had happened, not when the plants were sprouting, but when the wheat began to bear grain. They saw the fruit there, but the tares, there was no fruit there. There was no grain there. They said, what's happened? There's been bad seed sown among the good seed. And the owner said it was an enemy who did this. So the harvest, Jesus said, is the end of the age. That is, there's not going to be a separation until the end comes. And so that's what we're all looking to one day, even though it seems as if maybe God's not so concerned about the fact that there's this big difference between the righteous and the wicked. Sometimes it seems unfair, doesn't it? That they get kind of the same treatment as those who have repented of their sins, the righteous receive. But that is not a commentary on the way things will always be. Now, there is a day coming when there's going to be a separation of the sheep from the goats, another analogy that Jesus used one time. And this time, it's a separation of the wheat from the tares. And what happens? Well, the reapers are the angels. This is the end of time. And verse number 40, just as the tares are gathered up and burned with fire, so shall it be at the end of the age. And so there is a destiny that the tares are ultimately going to face. Jesus had already said in verse number 30 in that parable itself, first gather up the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them up. And so they were thrown into the fire and consumed, annihilated, perished, whatever you want to call it. And that's the end of the tares. Whereas the wheat was gathered into, verse number 30, into his barn. Okay? And so if you get nothing else from that, let's fundamentally get that there are two kinds of people and there are two ultimate destinies for all people, either in God's barn or either to be burnt in the furnace like chaff. Oh my. Okay, there's more I want to say about this. It gets even more interesting, all right? So, see you next time.